My grandfather used to say that once in your life you need a doctor, a lawyer, a policeman, and a preacher. But every day, 3 times a day, you need a farmer. When Brenda Scap quoted this, he made a point. With this note, I, Rashi Jha, and Nivedya would like to extend our very warm regards and welcome you all at the SIIB Conclave 2020. The theme for this session's event is Future of Work Post-Pandemic Global Food Chain. As the COVID-19 pandemic rages on in most of the countries in the world and leaders move to take protective measures, there's a concern that things will never be the same. With the current situation and changing dynamics, all stakeholders need to know the skill set required for the future workforce. eConclave, a 2-day business summit on the theme Future of Work Post-Pandemic. The event aims to bring different elements of business acumen to a single platform through exciting events in the domains of marketing, finance, supply chain management, human resources, agribusiness, and energy and environment. The discussion would aim to cover issues such as the impact on Indian diplomacy due to pandemic, the kind of skill set required for the future workforce, and the practices to be adopted by a B school in terms of teaching learning process, providing the students an overview of the corporate life. We are pleased to introduce our guest speakers of SIIB eConclave who will share their views on the future of work post-pandemic global food chain. The panelists are Mr. Dilip Rajan, Managing Director, East West Seeds; Mr. Atul Mehra, Chairman, Tasty Dairy; Mr. Abhijit Durakkar, VP, Sales and Marketing, Global Gourmet Private Limited; Mr. Praveen Waugh, General Manager, Reliance Retail. We also cordially welcome the moderator, director, deputy director, faculties, staffs, our alumni, students of SIIB, students all around the country, and corporates. Now, we would like to present to you a glimpse of future of work post-pandemic global food chain. Prashant sir, would you please play the video?
Coronavirus has also disrupted the supply chain across India. Several online grocery platforms like
Now to growing concerns over our food supply, from stores limiting meat purchases to Wendy's
Welcome, Gulnaz.
Wow, it was such an insightful and interesting video. Now, I'd request all guests and dignitaries to turn on their camera so that we can have a virtual group photo and make this moment even more memorable.
Please ask participants also to switch on their video so that we will have a full screen.
Yeah. Now, please, participants too, please switch on your cameras.
कैमरा बंद करने बोलेगी.
Prashant, maybe you also. Ayush Jha and Sagar Gosavi, maybe. Yeah, maybe now you can click. Thank you.
Now, I would like to introduce you to our moderator, Dr. Ravi Sharma. Dr. Ravi Sharma is an assistant professor in the Department of Energy and Environment, SIIB, and holds a doctoral degree in forestry management from Forest Research Institute, University, Dehradun, and was a researcher with Indian Institute of Forest Management, Bhopal. He has 10 plus years of experience in academics and research. His area of interest are working with communities, NGOs related to sustainable livelihoods, sustainability, and climate change. He has published many research papers, book chapters, and books with reputed publisher and handled funded research projects. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nivedya and Irashi. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this panel, which is the third session of 2 days SIB eConclave 2020 on future of work post-pandemic, global food chain. I welcome you all in this panel discussion. The agriculture value chain, all that happens from farm to fork, is complex, and we have experienced that how its ability to put food on our tables can be affected by the pandemic. How businesses reacts and the leadership roles plays an important role in this time of crisis. The global crisis has exposed the strengths and weakness of current supply chains and manufacturing sectors, including the standards and practices to sustainably deliver goods and services. In today's session, the focus will be on deconstructing and explaining the agriculture and allied sector challenges and offering valuable information and insights in the context of COVID challenge and the future post-pandemic. We have the opportunity in this moment to together shape the future of the global food chain. The agriculture sector is the only bright spot at this moment, which witnessed an impressive growth of 3.4% in Q1 of financial year 2021. The recent forecast by CRISIL also shows that agriculture will depict positive growth when GDP may register negative growth. When the other pillars of economy have been severely impacted during the pandemic crisis, it is very crucial to understand that what role agriculture, which is the oldest and strongest pillar, is going to play for unfolding economic recovery and shaping the future of work and global food chains post-pandemic. The perspectives of industry leaders will definitely enlighten you with their experiences of people working on the front lines of total food supply and its production. how the pandemic has changed and and how it has impacted the agriculture and allied sectors, and a look at the post-pandemic future. As organizations move from disruption to recovery, they will look to engaging with key stakeholders such as customers, suppliers, employees, and government in new ways. And the role of leadership is crucial here. And we are lucky that today we have a panel of experts who will share with us their industry experiences, challenges faced, and opportunities explored in this COVID pandemic situation, and how they visualize the future post-pandemic in the agriculture and food processing sector, which emerged as the forerunner to cater the need for nation and its people during the times of crisis, along with the doctors and security professionals. So on to the discussion today, we are pleased to have with us 4 panel expert members from industry: Mr. Atul Mehra, Chairman, Tasty Dairy; Mr. Abhijit Durakkar, Vice President, Sales and Marketing, Global Gourmet Private Limited; Mr. Dilip Rajan, Managing Director, East West Seas; and Mr. Praveen Wagh, who is General Manager with Reliance Retail. I welcome you all once again. Moving on with the panel members today, in this panel discussion, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce today's first speaker of the session, Mr. Dilip Rajan, who is Managing Director, East West Seeds, and which is a leading agro-biotech company. Mr. Rajan is an accomplished international executive with 25 plus years of experience, supported by a proven track record of business restructuring, turnaround, and above market growth. Comfortable operating in both developed and emerging markets with a special focus on Asia Pacific, he is passionate and fully engaged professional whose leadership capabilities have helped build team and develop talent in a multifunctional manner. During his career, he has led local and regional business units and profit and loss responsibilities across diverse markets. He has also driven categories and brands globally. Professionally adaptive and culturally inclusive, he has worked and lived in 7 countries, including India, United States, Canada, Singapore, UAE, Bahrain, and Thailand. Mr. Dilip Rajan, the stage is yours, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Good morning, everyone. And it's indeed a pleasure for me to speak to all of you on the future of work post-pandemic, global food chain. I really want to thank the organizers for including me on this panel. To pick up on what Dr. Sharma said, while agriculture is now being touted as the silver lining, an interesting fact that I'd like to offer at the outset is, since our independence, India has had 3 recessions: 1958, 1966, and in 1980. The reason was the same each time: a monsoon shock that hit agriculture, then a sizable part of the economy. We are currently undergoing, as we see, another recession. And what is different is that this time we could potentially be bailed by agriculture. So going back to echoing what Dr. Sharma just mentioned. So I'm told that this 2-day conclave is a repeat of the one that was done last year, except that now it is virtual due to the pandemic. So clearly a sign of times that we're living in these days. I, like all of us, saw the original video or the video that was shown. So the question really here is, how relevant is the topic of global food chain? So let me quote FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. By 2050, feeding this global population of almost 10 billion will require a radical transformation in how food is produced, processed, traded, or consumed. Now, feeding this expanding population, both nutritiously and sustainably will require substantial improvements to global, regional, and local food systems so that we can provide decent employment and livelihoods for the producers and every actor along the food chain without damaging our natural resources. And a couple of the panelists here that are with me are the other actors that I'm referring to. Now, the food system has suffered, as you saw in the video, a series of disruptions during this pandemic. Could be from momentary interruptions to the food supply, to episodes of price volatility. All of you are seeing in the paper about the onion prices. There are partial and or temporary closure of markets, be it borders, ports, or airports. And then consequently, the reduction in the family income due to this pandemic has hindered both the physical and the economic access to essential food. Now, it's believed many of them could extend over time due to the socio-economic crisis triggered by the pandemic. So as was articulated by the person who introduced us, I'd like to speak on three aspects, right? Why is food production, which is kind of the area that I come from, and I guess my colleagues will also speak about the downstream and the supply chain. And the second part of it is what has really happened to us as management when we look at COVID and how are we managing. And the third part is my humble appeal to you as the youth to consider agribusiness as a viable career choice. So that's how I'm going to structure my comments. So let me start with the first one. COVID has actually brought the sharp focus, the need to reorient our food basket. When we talk about sustainable agriculture or food production, it is a given that plant-based nutrition are much more sustainable systems of production and consumption from the environment and the nutrition viewpoint. And it also behooves into the sustainable development goals as well. Now, briefly on the company that I represent, East West Seed, we are a Dutch-based multinational vegetable seed company. We have over 35 years in breeding, in producing and delivering high quality vegetable seeds. So take what I'm saying, the next statement with a grain of salt, but it is a fact. And I submit that in these tough times, vegetables can actually offer a better economic choice for the smallholder farmers of India. And I say this because smallholder farmers contribute 78% of the farmers in India. And why is that? Because these are high value crops. They can be grown on very small farm size and still get better returns. They can be harvested quickly, between 45 to 50 days. And a farmer, if you're all business leaders, it's all about sweating the assets. So if he's got a very small asset, can he extract more value from that? So vegetables offers a farmer anywhere between 3 to 4 crops so that he can actually, or he, and today's Mint newspaper says we got to stop the narrative of he, farmer is he. We got to say farmer is both. Can they meet the needs and increases in food consumption? Now, it is important to note that even before the pandemic, the food supply chain was in transition. The forces at play are still the same, except that the pandemic has exacerbated a few of them. Today, consumers, like all of us on this call, have signaled that our eating habits could potentially change permanently. We want to eat more at home, we want to eat more vegetables, and a lot of us are saying we want to grow our own vegetables, whether it's the home garden or the kitchen garden. So what does this mean? And that means that we will have to, both businesses and entrepreneurs or agripreneurs, will have to find different product and service innovation. We should talk about knowledge transfer, and we should talk about business models that cater to this changing consumer pattern. I cannot emphasize this more than this, and that is technology will disrupt agri-value chains, will drive higher productivity, and more importantly, will create new channels to market, and there will be a greater willingness to engage digital technology. Now, this is a motherhood statement, but I think the pandemic has shown us that the immense value of digital tools and agriculture can no longer be left behind. Now, in a country which relies on millions and millions of smallholder farmers, we need a systematic application of digital tools that will support both production and supply chain. And I think this is where I believe is the future opportunities for both agripreneurs and for people trying to pursue a career. Now, I'll briefly touch about this new agri-reform bills that you've all seen and read about. For the government, these 3 bills could accelerate growth via the private sector, something that has always remained in a niche. We think that private sector role can actually enhance infrastructure, supply chains, and essentially create an ecosystem that does not exist today. So the last question is, can agribusiness be a viable career choice? Note that I didn't say agriculture. I call it agribusiness. And I think the pandemic has shown, as I said in my outset, immense value that agriculture can help in both our economies and rural demand. Folks, this is India's largest enterprise. We employ over half of our people. After years of augmenting production and ensuring food safety, food security, India finally is embarking on a different path, a path where there's a pronounced focus to cash in on the era of surpluses and to alleviate agrarian distress. We are now talking about exports. So I really think we are at an inflection point where this could very well be the 1991 for Indian agriculture. The agri bills, the focus right now on agriculture, and the ability to attract younger and newer talent into this ecosystem. Now, but to do that effectively, India will need to deploy solutions that allow for rapid, sustainable, and resource efficient growth. And if we do this, I submit that we can actually make agriculture sector both intellectually satisfying and an economically gratifying profession. In fact, we conducted a webinar yesterday with FICCI, and the title of the webinar was A Day in the Life of a Vegetable Farmer. We actually had two young farmers, successful vegetable farmers, both from Maharashtra, who were on the call, and they explained a day in the life. But what I found fascinating was one of them was an MBA and a BSc in agriculture. And he took a fundamental choice of saying, I want to pursue agriculture. The other gentleman was more traditional. He had inherited property from his forefathers and they were growing pulses and cereals. And he decided that I need to make a shift to become more economically viable. When I hear these stories, I really think we need to change the narrative that agriculture is not in the villages and the dusty and uneducated. I really think that if to build a sustainable agriculture and food security, as well as agrarian prosperity, is in the hands of the educated youth. And those are the folks. If each of you choose to take agriculture production and or other related activities based on, and this is important, based on the integrated application of science and social wisdom, I think our untapped demographic dividend will become our greatest strength. So with that, I pass it back to you, Dr. Sharma.
Thank you, Mr. Rajan. Indeed, a very thoughtful and very crisp and short presentation, which covers the multitude of transformations that are required, the pace and the need for the students and agripreneurs to look into. Also, I like the point that the people want to grow their own vegetables, and so the new business models and knowledge transfer will be there. So this is very valuable for those students and agripreneurs who want to pursue their careers in this field. Examples, short example that were given by Mr. Rajan are really, I urge students to look into and give a thought on this if you want to pursue your career in the field of agriculture. The other multitudes that were covered in very you can say very crisp points are sustainable agriculture and smallholders farmers, change in habits, innovations, knowledge transfer, etc. Thank you, Mr. Rajan. We will get back to you during the Q&A session. And now we will move to our next expert talk. Now we have with us Mr. Atul Mehra. Mr. Mehra is the leading entrepreneur in dairy and food segment. He was co-chairman of the National Committee of CII on allied sectors in agriculture, dairy, fisheries, and poultry. He is founder of Indo-Dutch Center of Excellence on Dairy, also known as INDUCE, born out of MOU between Tasty Dairy Specialties Limited and PUN Senior Experts, Netherlands, which is actively working for the welfare of dairy farmers by providing them proper training and education on best modern dairy techniques. He was awarded with CEO of the Year by Agriculture Today Group at Indian Dairy Awards 2020. He is promoter and chairman of Tasty Dairy Specialties Limited, a leading dairy company in the state of Uttar Pradesh, India, with a turnover of over INR 4 billion and listed on the Bombay Stock Exchange. Mr. Mehra, over to you, please.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here at the e-conclave organized by Symbiosis Institute on the future of work post-pandemic and its impact on the global food chain. I'll be speaking about how the food chain was impacted at the start of pandemic, how it reacted, how challenges were addressed, and what needs to be done further to address the emerging changes from a management perspective. A lot of points were covered in the video which was shown earlier by Dr. Ravi Sharma, and Mr. Dilip Rajan has covered many points, including government interventions and the encouragement that are being given right now, and the new opportunities that are emerging in the agribusiness. To start with, the COVID pandemic has brought about unprecedented stresses on the food supply chain. While the impacts of COVID-19 are still unfolding, experiences so far show the importance of an open and predictable international trade environment to ensure food can move from where it is needed. The biggest risk for food security is not with food availability, mind it, but with consumers' access to food. Safety nets are essential to avoid any increase in hunger and food insecurity. This point was also covered earlier in the presentation. Another threat that has also emerged is that we must be careful on any foodborne pandemic which can occur in the future. This is also one point which must be kept in mind in terms of food security, and we have to be prepared accordingly. COVID-19 has led to a drastic shift in consumer demand away from restaurants towards food consumed at home, requiring important changes in the way food supply chain operates. Schools and colleges are still not open, traveling is reduced considerably, and social functions are greatly reduced as well. In such times, companies such as ours have also tried to lay the vision for the upcoming future of work. Throughout the pandemic, we have ensured transportation for the employees. This was a big challenge in the beginning of the lockdown. Family support, salary assurances, work from home opportunities, and proper social distancing measures for full protection during the work. We also had the way of working on stakeholders regularly being updated about our affairs and consumers being ensured timely supplies. We are also adopting the change in consumer demand with people working from home. We expect consumption of beverages and nutritious food, for which we are planning to start cheese, whey drinks, flavored drinks, and much more products. This is the kind of new products that we want to launch for the new generation, for the new way of working that is emerging. Moreover, through our initiative Induced, we are training the farmers and agripreneurs to enter this business. We have had regular training programs, webinars, where people are taught to enter the dairy business, dairy farming, set up small MSME units, and we do hand-holding and support to them. And this is an effort to double the farmers' income, which even our government wants. Now, I'd like to specifically talk about challenges and opportunities for the dairy industry during and post-pandemic. Allow me to give you some background on the dairy sector in India before we speak about the challenges. We are the biggest producers of milk in the world. India is the biggest producer. Our annual production reached 187 million tons last year, contributing to 22% of the entire world production. Our compounded annual growth is 6% against the world growth of only 2.3%. The contribution of total agriculture and allied activities in the national GDP is around 18%, as per National Account Statistics 2019, and dairy alone contributes to 5% in it. And thus, dairy sector contributes to about 26% in agriculture GDP. Dairy manufacturing is growing at 15% compounded annual growth and expected to become 2,450 billion. Our dairy index is, export index is positive and generates about 2,500 crores annually. And most of the milk produced by India is by marginal farmers. This is one fact we have to appreciate, that all the milk is mostly produced in the unorganized sector by small marginal farmers whose main source of income would be agriculture, and it's an allied source of income, dairy is, and slowly the change is coming, and dairy is going to become a main source of daily income for them. Now, delving into specific impact of COVID-19 on the dairy industry. With the declaration of complete lockdown effective from 25th March 2020, the whole economy paused. However, the dairy industry remained a bit resilient compared to many sectors in India. Nevertheless, the following impact has been noticed from dairy industry too. On account of lockdown, most of the bulk consumers, the horeca that we call, suddenly reduced their demand, which could not be resumed till date, as government of India has not permitted them to operate fully. There are lockdowns happening. The zones where the hotels and other things are still not operating fully, those things are happening. Whole milk distribution was under essential activity. Yes, milk was considered as an essential activity, so there were a lot of relaxation for that. But there had been disruptions in distribution of milk and product supply, and private unorganized players were severely affected by it. Urban workforce decided to return back to their respective towns, leading to reduction of milk demand. This reduced the milk demand in the cities. Percentage of milk procurement to sale dropped significantly. With the lockdown progressing further and entering into phase of second and third stage, immigration of urban labor to their hometown increased. As such, rural consumption also increased. Onset of summer resulted in further reduction of milk availability in the rural area. These were the fallouts of the weather and of the pandemic. Way forward for the dairy industry. This is important, how we see the dairy industry going forward. Considering the immediate impact of COVID-19 on dairy industry, we can emphatically say that we are relatively resilient from the impact of pandemic as compared to other industries in the country. For the way forward, we need to evaluate the following determinants of the dairy industry. First is the production of milk. We have to understand how the production of milk has to be improved, how the supply chain management has to be done, and how the consumption of the milk and milk products in terms of more value-added products or in terms of basic consumption of milk has to be addressed. For production of milk, I'll keep it short. I have a detailed view on this, but I'll keep it short in the in the times that we have. Production of milk, as we are aware that milk production is a function of several variables which are controllable and non-controllable. Some of these factors include cattle population, the management of the herd, the animal health services. And these are the areas in which the management and the upcoming people, they have to work upon. The next point is economic environment. COVID-19 has severely affected the Indian economy, as said earlier, and rural population could not remain untouched from it. There has been reduction in surplus income to manage their herds in terms of feeding and healthcare. Hence, in post-COVID area, milk production may decrease. Supply chain management. Supply chain management consists of the following components: procurement of the milk. This is a function of several variables, and how these variables are going to be covered or affected by COVID-19 is the milk collection infrastructure. There has to be a growth in that at the village level, and milk chilling and storage facilities. Of course, the government is also encouraging this. And while there has been ample investment in creation of infrastructure for chilling and storage of milk in rural areas, government has allocated funds to further strengthen these facilities. Hence, during post-COVID period, this infrastructure is likely to be further strengthened, leading to prepare itself for increased milk handling. So supply chain management, as I said, is going to be a very important area in which a lot of work is being done and will be done. Processing facilities, as said earlier, a 15,000 crore fund has been allocated by the government, and there are other schemes through the banks, Kisan credit cards and other things through which production of milk and financing in this area is being done. So processing facilities are also going to increase. The next point is the distribution. Distribution of milk is very important. We have to see how seamless distribution can be done. So dairy industry witnesses huge disturbances in distribution affecting its demand, but it's almost sure that most of the distribution hurdles will be overcome under post-COVID period. Industry will address all the challenges of distribution. Finally, coming to the consumption of milk and milk products. There has been a tremendous negative impact on consumption of milk and milk products. You see how the ice cream industry has been impacted. During the period of lockdown, and demand of liquid milk as well as fresh and fermented milk reduced. Certain categories of dairy products like ice creams, as I said, may not get even revival post this pandemic because of the issues of the distribution, the cold chain, and people, the way people perceive the cold products during, the pandemic. Consumption of skim milk powder, the main backbone of the dairy industry, will also witness deviation from normal on account of postponement of weddings and lack of demand for traditional products like sweets, khoya, ice cream, as I said earlier. However, as the country continues to open up, bulk consumption will immediately take a surge and demand for liquid milk, fresh and fermented products will increase. Since there is sufficient stock of commodities, price of milk will remain subdued compared to previous years. To sum up, while there have been considerable hits to the supply chain management in the dairy industry under post-COVID era will be better off due to financial support given by the Government of India. We have to look at advanced inventory management systems, checking the imbalances in the supply chain, ensuring the right price for the consumers and the producers, use of technology like blockchain, AI, IoT, areas of food which give complete nutrition, as well as helping develop immunity for such diseases. The work from home culture may also need management of our diet in a healthy and sustainable manner, and in which dairy is going to play a very important role. We start our life with milk, and we are going to continue with the food and beverages that we have daily when we are working from home. And that's one area in terms of food and nutritious drinks that's going to come up, and it's an area worth looking at. With this, I sum up my presentation, and of course, I'll be open to answer all kinds of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bera. Sure, we will revert back during Q&A session. It was really a great insight and perfectly presented, giving the overview of dairy industry, highlighting the points related to safety nets, food security, especially the new generation producers, and the capacity building of farmers, boosting, which is very much required for boosting the rural economy. Excellent overview of dairy industry and challenges that dairy industry encountered during the pandemic, and the way forward that is required in dairy industry. Thank you very much, Mr. Mehra. Okay, continuing in the session, let me invite our next expert speaker of the panel, Mr. Abhijit Durakkar. Mr. Durakkar is associated with Global Gourmet Private Limited, Vadodara, as a Vice President, Sales and Marketing to start and stabilize the seafood operations, and also responsible for the veg product range. He is an accomplished and results-driven professional with over 25 years of experience in strategy planning, general management, international sales and marketing, procurement, production, fishing operations, logistics, business development with profit accountability. Mr. Durakkar is proficient in key managerial areas such as profit center management, cost management, budgeting, business planning, and so on, as well as functionally adept in the fields of international sales and marketing, supply chain management, logistics, and team management, to name a few. In his illustrious career spanning well over 25 years, he has assumed important offices in companies such as West Coast Group, Iravati Group, Alanson Group Limited, Binka Seafoods Belgium, and Rallis India Limited, to name a few. Mr. Durakkar is our own alumni and has received his master's in business administration from Symbiosis Institute of International Business. Mr. Rajan, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. This is greetings to all the e-conclave participants, and it's a pleasure to be back in the college campus, being the first batch alumni from the same college.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cover the frozen food industry segment today, because that is where I come from. So I represent a company called Global Gourmet. We are one of the largest private label manufacturers of frozen food for very large retail chains in US, Europe, and some part of the world. So the topic which I'm going to cover is basically divided into two parts. One is the change in the customer's expectations, and how we then plan accordingly the operational management and the resource management to cater to that kind of expectation change or the market requirements. So when it comes to the customer's expectations, so what customer look at? Frozen food, is also called as a convenience food. But today, face-to-face shopping has reduced dramatically while the basket size is increasing. When we say basket size, the shopping pattern in terms of buying one packet, people have gone for more than one packet at a time, and with the contactless delivery. So there has been an increase in the home cooking pattern, ready-made and convenience meal consumption has also increased, and there is an increase in the loyalty towards the brand which is being supplied in the market. Overall customer expectations on the availability to the consistently sourced food and its trust, quality, and safety have increased dramatically, which includes the nutritional value of the food. Now, what does it mean? Food retailers and the service provider will have to provide significantly increased product surety and safety within the supply chain to improve not only the supply of physical goods, but also when and how they sell it. They have to ensure the plans in place to ensure the product quality, quantity, availabilities at the correct time. Now, companies have to shift towards the holistic risk management where they will need to adopt to invest in new technologies, capabilities such as intelligent automation, advanced trace and track systems, predictive supply chain tools, blockchain platforms. These solutions will be able to deliver the food purity and the safety required. By leveraging the improved data processing and the AI to be better predict possible product supply, the food safety incidents allow the food retailer or the food services provider to be proactive than reactive in response to better meet the customer's expectations. Now, what is happening in terms of the expectations? The more and more customers are trying to become a vegan, as Mr. Rajan has said that vegetarian is coming up in a big way. So we have been seeing the shift of the vegan system, and in one of the facilities, like we are converting that entire facility into a vegan facility and certified as a vegan, where we are really getting an advantage to penetrate into certain niche market segments in the world, in the premium market. Now, how do we do that? Basically, to cope up to the system, we have done a lot of changes in our system to get this corrected in terms of our operational management. The audits and inspection systems have changed drastically. Since the customers are getting loyal to the brand, taste, and the end sellers or retailer expect the quality and assurity and the consistency, the audit checkpoints have increased. Now, these audit checkpoints include like BRC. Now, when we call BRC is basically a British Retail Consortium kind of a certification, which is more on a food safety. Now, this BRC is becoming a base platform to get any entry in the international food chain. It is controlled by the top retailers in the world and is updated very frequently, at times once in a year or twice in a year. The audits are depending on the grade and the checks are more stringent. Apart from the BRC, the customers, big retailers in Europe and USA, they are sending their own audit systems, which is in addition to BRC. So companies like Tesco. Now, Tesco audit system is more stringent than BRC today. So we have to get adapted to the more stringent norms to cater to that trust and surety which the customer is looking forward. These days, audits are becoming virtual audits. So physically, in last 6 months, we have been facing the virtual audits where we have to give an access of our CCTV cameras. And during this time, more than one areas are accessed at the same time with multiple auditors. So it becomes more alert or more stringent thing to operate on the factory level where we have to be more alert and we have to be more cautious in terms of delivering the services or the access to the system. Apart from this, not only the food safety, the social and ethical audits are also playing a very important role as the existing pre-endemic, during the pre-pandemic also, the SEDEX, DSCI, IWAY, these audits were very common, but today they are making it mandatory that we have to get, because that includes the social behavior of a labor movement and everything. So labeling what Mr. Rajan has mentioned about the nutritional value. Now, nutritional value is very important today because the customer is reading the nutritional value on the packet. He is trying to understand what he is consuming is right or wrong, what kind of a nutritional value he is going to intake on the product. So labeling is becoming very important and it is part of the HACCP plan and treated as one of the CCP today in our stages. Now, how do companies take it? The company on the customer expectations, basically, we divide into 6 stages. One is elevate your customer understanding. Try to understand more on what is your customer wants from your product. Then reboot your innovation model. Try to give something more. So NPD, the new product development has to be very strong. The innovation has to be very strong in terms of your production efficiency, flavor profiles, presentation. Then rearrange your current portfolio because there are certain products which people look at more of a convenience food, like meals or party food or bakeability products. So that needs to be rearranged. Your portfolio has to be rearranged. Then revisit your brand building model. How you take your company to the customer. You have to think about those brand building. Then renovate your go-to-market model because the approach has totally changed. Earlier, it was like, okay, you produce, the distributor will distribute, retailer was selling. But today, you have to renovate your go-to-market model and then transform your value chain. What to customer is not the product. It is along with the product, the services involved is very, very going to be important. So lastly, coming back again on the operation side, during this COVID, there has been lots of hiccups in the early stages. What has been mentioned, there was a food shortages and so on. So when we started our factory, this was sometime in May, we had a lot of resistances from the government in the early stages, like because we were doing any kind of a labor-intensive activity. The number of people working in the production area were restricted. The health check methodology was made very strict. The isolation systems was very stringent. The entry and exit out in the factory was very stringent. So this has affected a production capacity at a large. But on a long run, this has paid off in terms of building that trust in the market with the customers, and the product delivery was very smooth. So we didn't have any kind of rejections and any kind of non-acceptability in the market. So today, the similar kind of questions are going faced from the international customers because today they are asking, because of the number of cases rising in India, they are taking a lot of things from us, how we plan our movement of labor, how we manage their personal health check, and how we also deliver the production back to the committed quantity which we have committed them almost a year back. So what has happened? This has increased the production efficiency for labor because the concentration of the labor was very nice during this pandemic period. The controls from the factory was much better, and we were giving it a very right product in that market range. So in Indian market, normally we have very less penetration in Indian market. We service only 10% of our production in the Indian market. But what we have seen, there has been a significant 200% growth in Indian market on the convenience meal side, or the convenience food, meals and party foods and all. But internationally, there is a 30% rise. At the same time, we have to plan a lot of activities like the raw material, packaging material, the labor, the skilled labor. The skilled labor was very difficult task for us to manage during the post-pandemic because they all scattered. So we have to develop a multi-skill laborers within the same resources what was available. The person who was making spring rolls and the person who was making samosas and the other items was different. So we have to use the similar kind of labor, and the task management was very difficult. But initially it was safe, but today it is now back to normal, and everything is like in a pre-pandemic stage today. what I have to tell you is basically, I would really emphasize on that part is when we go back post-COVID, we have to really elevate your customers' understanding, reboot your innovation in terms of how you make the product, change your portfolio, revisit your branding model, renovate your go-to-market model, and then transform the value chain. So this is what I would like to highlight in terms of my company presentation and my experience. I am open for any kind of questions during the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Sure, sir. Thank you, Mr. Durokar. Points well presented, especially the insights on operational management and the audit and evaluation practices that will be going to change post-pandemic. The need of AI and technologies, risk management, blockchain, in operations, in manufacturing sector, in retail sector. I guess a lot of things, a lot of deliberations it's required on this topic, and it is what I see it as a future of post-work when we consider the technologies and all that. Other point that you highlighted, very important, customer perception and behavior change, the role of labeling and emphasizing on the product value chain, especially the innovate go-to-market model and the social disruption, how to tackle them. We will revert back to you with these questions. That seems to be very interesting, and we have received questions on the same topic, AI, role of technologies and the perception. So we'll revert back to you. Okay, at the last but not the least, we have with us Mr. Praveen Wagh, who is General Manager with Reliance Retail. Mr. Praveen has a distinguished career spanning over 15 years in supply chain for corporations like McDonald's and Cafe Coffee Day. He has done his postgraduate diploma in supply chain management from Symbiosis Institute of International Business. He is our own alumni. Mr. Praveen has a vast experience of working in the food industry in roles like distribution management, sourcing strategy, supply chain management, and team management. Mr. Praveen, over to you, please.
Thanks, Ravi. Good afternoon to all. First of all, thank you for inviting me in the discussion on this interesting topic, which is future of work post-pandemic on the global food chain. And you have named it right. This is a very interesting topic. And again, thank you, Director Ma'am, for inviting me here. I hate not to be there physically amongst you guys. Hope to see you all soon.
Looking forward to.
Yeah.
New normal, I guess. So very insightful thoughts from the earlier panel members, Mr. Dilip, Mr. Atul, Mr. Abhijit. So what we have seen so far is the upstream, supply chain and the overall management. What I would represent is the impact, and would try and paint a picture of post pandemic scenario of the retail sector, which is the downstream sector. I would try and divide my overall thoughts in 4 sub blocks. I'll just tell you how the industry has changed. The retail industry has changed post pandemic. What as a supply chain function has changed? What are the expectations of the management that have changed from supply chain as a function? As leaders, how are we expected now to behave? Again, in a limited scope of supply chain for retail, and how is the job scenario overall going to look like? So coming back to the industry, let me tell you, all of us in this virtual room who are directly or indirectly related to the agri-business should thank God that we are related to agri-business in this era right now, because we, as Ravi also mentioned, and as all panelists also have mentioned, is that we are the sector which is one amongst the least impacted by financially, of course, by COVID, if not the least impacted. The overall impact on the sector, financial impact, is minuscule. In some cases, it is positive because of the changing nature of customer spending and changing priorities of the customer spending. In some cases, like the one which I represent, the last mile retail, we have seen positive changes in the last quarter. We have clocked positive growth for the overall business. So we are fortunate enough to be in this industry. As they say, in each pandemic, there are two industries which are least affected. One is the defense and one is the agriculture. This pandemic has not spared even defense. So the government spending on defense overall might reduce, but on the agriculture it will not. What it will also mean is that the investments in the infrastructure for the overall agriculture business, right from the right from the upstream to the downstream, will increase. May it be domestic, may it be international, as per the norms of the government in each sector, but it will increase, A, because there is a huge scope, and B, the returns will be much faster now. So as an industry, we have witnessed a huge change, positive change for us. Second is the expectations of the final customers, as far as retail industry is concerned, have changed. They want safe food, correct? Earlier, they wanted cost-effective food. Cost-effective is a jargon used for cheap, but in many retail discussions. But now they want safe food. So safety has come at the top priority now. Second, they also want to know how their food is safe. Right? So customer communication piece has become the paramount important. So where do you source from? How do you maintain social distancing across the chain? How have minimum number of hands touched the product, and so on and so forth, has to be communicated to the customer in a right way. And the third thing, and the most important thing in the retail, food retail, is the convenience that the customer expects today, vis-a-vis pre-pandemic. The kind of expectation that the customer has on the online delivery of fruits and vegetables that we have seen through JioMart also is, and you must have seen that in different news spaces, is tremendous. There is a huge scope, and customer is expecting the convenience also to be attached to fruits and vegetables, along with the freshness, along with the safety, along with the cost. So these are a couple of changes that we have seen. Some positive, some not so positive, but I'm sure that the end result of all those is going to work for the industry. On the second on the second block on how the supply chain is expected to change. The expectations, as I said, from supply chain as a function from the overall management of the organizations, irrespective of the size of the organizations, has changed drastically. We as supply chain professionals are expected to become much more agile than what we were. Because this is, seeing a pandemic is as good as seeing dinosaur in our generation. Like, nobody would have even thought a year back that we would go through such a huge change. But see, we have bounced back. All of us in all of the industries have bounced back to the extent what we could. Especially in the food retail sector, because everywhere else the demand and supply both had reduced. Here the only supply reduced, demand didn't. So as supply chain, we are expected to become much more flexible. What we are expected to do, and I'm not saying this has changed, but this has become more relevant, is source right from retail point of view. As I mentioned in my earlier blog, customer is expecting now to know, where have you guys sourced the product from? Has it been sourced safe? So sourcing right has become important, like it was at the same time making sure that the bottom lines are taken care of, which is a huge challenge, for the sourcing team. The second, biggest block is processing it quick. Again, from retail point of view, we in the processing centers get 3 to 3.5 hours to process the entire fresh fruit and vegetable that we have sourced. This time window that is available for the middle chain of supply chain is going to shrink day by day for two reasons. One is that the harvesting practices will change in the coming time thanks to technology, and second is that we would like minimum time gap between a harvest and a consumer getting the product. So the middle chain, the time available for the middle chain is going to shrink big time, especially post pandemic, because the freshness has become a paramount importance. The third aspect is about the packaging. A couple of panelists also mentioned about this, but for retail point of view, to retain the life of the product, to retain the freshness of fruits and vegetables, the packaging has become utmost important. There was a time when packaging was developed. I'm sure the basic requirement was to protect the product. The focus slowly shifted to the communication of the product. In my opinion, my personal opinion, the focus will shift back to protecting the product, protecting the freshness of the product. How the product will breathe, how will it behave in moist temperature, how will it behave in up north, how will it behave in in the west, in the south, and so on and so forth. So packaging is going to become much more important and focused activity for the retail organizations. And the last thing, last but not the least, as they say, in terms of medium chain, is the workforce. We just heard it from Mr. Atul some time back on how the milk industry got affected during the pandemic. Similarly, for retail, we didn't get laborers for first 2-3 days because the movement was so restricted. Small things like making conveyance arrangement for labor to come, assuring them that it is a safer environment for them to work, encouraging them not to go back, because most of the labor force in India is a migrant labor force, right? It comes from 3-4 states to the rest of the country. So encouraging them not to go back and to stay back by giving them different benefits, including monetary benefits. All of that is going to change our overall perspective, the way we look at laborers. I would try and touch upon this in my next block, which is on the job scenario. But as of now, the way we as supply chain leaders are expected to see the business again is going to be way different. First and foremost, we'll have to have much more foresight than what we could afford to have earlier. The commodity prices are going to fluctuate much more. We all know the situation on onion that is happening around us. So the kind of foresightness, the kind of as I mentioned, the flexibility across the supply chain is going to decide the winner in the game in the medium run. The second thing that we are expected to manage now than never is the morale of the entire workforce, and it's not a secret that it's down, right from farmer to the middle management. The morale of the people is down as far as the business is concerned. We are the business, agri-business is the business where most of our workforce comes in unskilled category. Right? They have the huge, and what I have seen personally, they have huge insecurity going around. They don't know what will happen to their jobs. They don't know will the industry function the way it is functioning right now. So managing that is going to be a huge challenge. The only silver lining in this is that I see this industry, because of the pandemic, going to more structured than non-structured the way it is right now. As I told you, because of the investments, private investments that will keep happening, because of the consolidators that are coming in, the unstructured nature of the industry will slowly change. It will take time, but the change has started. So the training of the labor and the number of jobs for the labor are going to increase. So that's definitely a silver line. But currently, as we speak, to manage this this morale of the entire workforce is going to be a big challenge. Artificial intelligence, somebody also talk about it in the food retail, or the fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables retail earlier might not have played that big a part, but now with limited availability of a skilled labor, we have started thinking seriously about it. May it be color sorter, may it be automatic packing of machines, may it be sorting, grading of hardies, so on and so forth. So earlier, the industry which was majorly manual, we will witness that is going to go automatic route. That does not mean job reduction though, which is going to be my next point of discussion on the overall jobs. This does not mean jobs reduction, because the overall industry will grow, and at the expense of other industries, because the economy is there is no miracle that anybody expecting that the economy suddenly will start clocking positive numbers. But since we are in the essential industry, at the expense of the other industries, the industry definitely will start clocking positive growth. The jobs will increase, in my opinion, but the requirement of unskilled labor will go down. Good or bad can be a different debate, and we can spend a whole day discussing that. But that is something which is inevitable in my experience. On the retail, I think on the middle management level, the jobs are going to explode, because the structure itself has started coming in right now, like it has never before. The requirement of middle management, the people who want to make a career out of, and the youth like you guys who are watching us, the requirement from the industry of people like you has increased. I mean, for the scope for you guys to contribute to the industry has increased big time. So in my opinion, overall, as far as our industry is concerned, as far as all of us are concerned, who are, as I said, related directly or indirectly to food chain, guys, the situation is not as bad. So let's not be bogged down about watching the news and watching the negative sentiments across. The situation is not as bad, guys. I mean, chill. We are going to bounce back. Signs have already started coming in. And in no time, we will come back to where we were, and we will have this experience to tell our future generations, guys. We have seen something which our past generations have not seen. Hopefully, which will future generations will not see a pandemic like this. So we are unique in that way. So let us celebrate this uniqueness. Don't worry, things will be back. Thanks, Ravi, and thanks everybody for hearing me. That's all from my side. And of course, I'll be open to take any questions in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Praveen Wagh. Very enlightening, and especially when you talk about the downstream, the retail sector, the dynamics that are required in the supply chain post-COVID, the employment scenario especially, which I think all our participants will be looking forward to how the scenario is going to change, where the skill sets has to be developed. And the best part, how the expectations and the change behavior for the retail sector by the end users, that is customers. So of course, that will have an impact on the business. So more focus on the downstream aspect. Our students, our participants will have, and of course they will have questions related to this aspect addressed to you. So we will have those questions in Q&A session. It is always a great experience of getting the valuable insights directly from the industry stalwarts. If I have to, given a job, I have to sum up what our experts say. I like the point that Mr. Rajan starts with. The vegetables can offer a better economic returns for our small farmers. I think he presented a great opportunity that is available in this sector. And it's really very valuable. Apart from that, he talked about different opportunities, different global food system and agriculture markets. I think it's really enriching for our participants. Moving to the food processing industry, the dairy sector, the biggest problem which Mr. Mehra started with is food security is not food availability, but the access to food. And I must agree to this point that food production, food availability, and what we have seen in this pandemic is access to the food, which has caused a lot of disruptions in social sectors, the supply chain part. So all these has led to, and also I like we have got a great insights from Mr. Mehra on the dairy industry, from production of milk, the dairy variables like collection has to be better. The solutions that he has given, milk chilling and the storage are the dire need of the hour. The processing, the facilities that are promoted by the government, distribution channels has to be taken care. So all those aspects are very much, if we talk about the solutions, especially the manufacturing and B2B sector, Mr. Durakkar, he very nicely pointed the understanding of the customers, the new product development that is in need of the hour, rearranging the portfolios, revisit or we can say the brand rebuilding, and of course, improving the value chain. And the best part that, so we have covered all the aspects. Our stalwarts had covered all the aspects from the market, from the supply chain, and Mr. Praveen Wagh, he very nicely explained that retail customers now want safe food. He touched the important aspect that I would say the safety of the food. Now the customers has changed. Instead of cost-effective food, they want to know how food is safer, the sourcing of the food. And this is something that that is very much important. He also touched upon the packaging part, the carrier options. So this is all about what our stalwarts says. And I agree with the points that solutions they discussed in this forum. What I think the pandemic has taught us all that the situation will change and we need to change too. More resilience and adaptive capacity of the business in a more sustainable way. These unprecedented circumstances provide an opportunity to the agriculture and food processing sector to boost automation and the technology embedded initiatives, which our panel members also discussed in their talk. Also, the sustainable initiatives should be the need, and which will strengthen the food security and the safety of their stakeholders. Thus, if I have to sum up, this pandemic crisis has certainly acted as a catalyst to the transition of traditional practices to relevant agriculture technologies, digital agriculture solutions. I personally believe, what I personally believe is that there is a dire need for reorganizing the current practices and exploring the new lens of services. When we consider the future of work and the innovation in technology and ideas, which include the transformation at work, pushing the employee skill sets, positive impact on employment growth, effect of automation on skills and income, and more collaborations and partnerships are very much required if we want to forecast the future of work post-pandemic. Thank you, our panel members. It was a great discussion. Now, with this, we move on to the question and answer session, and we have received many questions from the participants. I request Mr. Prashant to please enable the chat box so that our external participants who are attending online can also post their questions. Please, my request is to mention your name and a brief question on the chat box.
Chat box is open.
Okay, so I will read the participant name, and I request the participant to please turn on their video, tell your name, panel member name to whom the question is to be addressed, and then ask your question. Please make a brief statement and to the point when asking your question. It's a request. So the first question, may I request Mr. Abhishek Mahur? Mr. Abhishek?
Yes, I am here.
Yeah.
Good morning, panel. First of all, I would like to thank you for addressing us. And I have a question for Mr. Atul Mehra.
Yeah, please continue.
Yes.
So, sir, my question is the cooperative model consisting of the milk producers and the milk unions. So it has been very successful in not only increasing the income level of the farmers, but also it has provided the consumers good quality milk at affordable prices. Now, sir, do you think corporate-owned large-scale dairy farms can be a possibility in our country?
Okay, good question. The first thing I want to tell you is during the Operation Flood, all the cooperatives were made in which Amul is the biggest one from Gujarat. Then we have Parag in UP. We have Nandini in Karnataka. So that was the model which was started when we were milk deficient. Operation Flood was taken up by Dr. George Vergis Kurian. And that's how the milk production increased. And today we are the largest producers of milk, as I said in my presentation. See, what is the typical thing about India is that 80% of the milk is still in the unorganized sector. 95% of our farmers, dairy farmers, are marginal farmers who have only 2 or 3 cattle. This is the backbone of our dairy industry and also of the agri system. So no matter how large farms are going to impact it, it's going to take 15 to 20 years to really change this. We can't change it because it's a daily source for our marginal farmers' income. So the milk has to come from this area. So large-scale farms is going to take time. It's going to be there for the value-added products and for the exportable product. But for the mass consumption, I think the production from the marginal farmers is going to carry on. Of course, they'll be trained better the way we are doing it. From 3 animals, they'll have 4 animals, 5 animals. But this is a typical style or the typical way the Indian dairy industry works, and we have to carry on with that. I hope I could answer the typical nature of the having marginal farmers in the dairy industry.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So next question, may I request Geetika Dumra? Geetika Dumra, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is from Abhijit, sir. Sir, because of false news spread, the demand for non-vegetarian food segment, especially chicken, I would say, was drastically affected. And now people are also shifting towards the vegan lifestyle. So what do you feel? It will affect the demand of non-vegetarian frozen food segment?
So if you're specifically about non-vegetarian, I don't think the demand will go drastically down overall in future, because within the non-vegetarian section, people are moving from the red meat to the chicken, then chicken to the fish and seafood consumption, which is termed as more healthier version of non-vegetarian. But yes, there is a shift on the vegetarian side on a large scale within India, internationally also. But at the same time, the consumption of non-vegetarian food is not going to affect to that extent which you are expecting. Because when you say that drastically change, no, it will not be drastically change. It will be marginal shift towards the vegetarian. But people consumption of vegetarian will be much higher going forward.
Same thing, question I want to tweak, and I request Mr. Mehra, what Durgakar sir has answered to the meat-based to dairy-based protein, the food. So same question if I ask you, Mr. Mehra, the shift from meat-based to dairy-based protein, you see this as a boost to dairy industry, and how it will boost the rural economy, if it is true.
Yeah, actually, see, most of our population has a vegetarian bias, and milk being a complete food, it contains good amount of proteins. So we have seen a lot of consumption going up in terms of paneer, the cheese, the cottage cheese that we can call. There's a lot of growth in the consumption of paneer. Milk being a complete food and being in the nature of vegetarian, of course, you know, when we start talking of vegetarian food, the story of vegan food comes up. So that story, as the earlier speaker said, it keeps happening, you know, the transition from one food to the other. Now we have the almond milk, the coconut milk. These are not milk, but we call them milk. So this transition will keep on taking place. Having said this, milk is a complete food. As I said in my presentation also, we start our life with milk. Milk is a complete food, except for iron. Milk contains everything that your body needs. But then there are issues of lactose intolerance, at the adult level, how much milk you can have, calcium, everything, you know, milk gives you everything. So the growth of milk industry in terms of, you know, earlier we had the problem of the milk fat being called not very healthy. Now we say it's very healthy. It's almost, you know, like a medicine for us. So that growth is there. Dairy has been a backbone of our food system in India. That will carry on. And that looks good for the rural economy also, because see, farmer gets a daily income out of milk. Apart from, you know, we talked of the vegetables, you get it 4 times a year, 5 times a year, but milk is a everyday income. So that is one way we feel that, you know, for doubling farmers' income, for enhancing the income of the rural population, which has migrated back, I feel dairy farming and dairy business is the sunrise industry, and people should take it up, and there is a lot of scope in that.
Exactly. So it's a boost to rural economy. So the dairy farming is something that is an opportunity.
You nailed it. Yes.
You want to be an entrepreneur in this field.
Yeah.
So it provides a good opportunity.
Yeah.
And my personal, I would say that it also provides you can say a boost for adopting a healthy diet.
Oh yes.
Yes. Okay. Now we will take another question. Who is Anugya Tripathi? Anugya?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ravi, sir. Answer, my question is for Dilip Rajan, sir.
Yeah, please continue.
Yes, sir. Sir, my question to you is that how are we dealing with the protection of small stakeholders of the business which are affected by such pandemic?
You expand on that question. When you say small stakeholders, are you referring to the farmers?
Yeah.
So yeah, directly and indirectly, which are related with the business.
Okay, so I think you've heard the earlier speakers as well say that when you look at it relative to the pandemic, agriculture has actually taken a softer blow. Having said that, when you look at it, obviously there are a couple of things that are at play right now. So if you're doing cereals or food crops, you obviously got all of those MSP, you've got all of the other support system. But specific to the vegetable crops, I think you've all seen that the supply and demand doesn't really match. And these are structural issues. So as a private company, we're trying to encourage them to see if they can get better yields, better agronomic practices. But I think there is a larger problem, right? If you look at it, McKinsey would say between 30 to 40% of fruits and vegetables are lost in post-harvest losses. So we talk about farm to fork. So there are some other issues, cold storage, that needs to happen. I believe that's kind of what was in my pitch, that there are opportunities to create this ecosystem. The new agri bills that are rolled out by the government of India, whether it's the Commodities Act, whether it's the farm produce, the ability to sell anywhere, will allow. But you have to get back to the core issues, right? Number one, the farmer will have to make an economic decision on what he or she wants to grow. Once you do that in the most economical way, how fast can we make sure that the produce arrives at the market? So there are lacunas and gaps over there, from a price discovery to the ability to sell. From our standpoint as a company, we are also looking at other, what we call as biotic and abiotic stresses, right? So when you look at climate change, for example, how can we actually give them different kinds of products or seeds that can actually, manage this climate challenge? But as I said, we've just started. The smallholder farmer is crucial to our food basket. Anything and everything we do is only going to enable and come back to us. So I would say right now, awareness is the first step to solving the problem, and getting newer thinking, newer ways of looking at it to fix those fundamental problems will go a long way.
Yeah,
Okay.
continuing with the same, Mr. Rajan, I just want to extend this discussion that I read somewhere that globally it is about, I read said that it is about 30% of the food produced that goes into waste through post-harvest losses that occur along the value chain. What you talked about, it's awareness at the stakeholder level, especially the small stakeholders. But my question, just a bit, I want to know your insights that how can an agrarian nation like India can overcome this issue of post-harvest losses and waste, and to increase the harvest efficiency? How it is possible, and what you think that some changes are required in the system?
You are obviously, that could be itself an entire webinar, but I'll try my perspective, right?
Yes.
I think, and let me caveat by saying I'm a relative newcomer to this industry. I've been in for almost 25 years in pharma, and I have coincidentally made the switch into agri. Now, when you look at it, there are the broader macro supply and demand issues, right?
Yeah.
But what I can see from as an outside in perspective is I find that we are making the right moves. Yesterday, all that I said, we actually had for the first time that this government is actually trying to put, agri counselors in our embassies, unheard of in the past, which means we are getting very serious in exporting our produce.
Yeah.
Part of this onion, obviously it's a political crop, it's the supply and demand. You're not able to predict the price. So on one hand, all of us as consumers, it pinches us when the price of onion goes to 100 rupees. But none of us worry when the farmer gets less than 10 rupees or 20 rupees. So when the prices are good, we have no problem. So I really think that has to be managed, number one.
Balanced.
Number two is, and I pick on something that my colleague from the dairy industry says, when you look at the price realization of the smallholder farmer, in addition to getting income every day from milk, the price realization, the share of wallet to the farmer is much higher in dairy when you look at pulses, cereals, and agriculture. So we need to even lift that up, right? And the third part of it is, how do we make sure, on one hand, we want to do export, but there is an issue of residue, right? Will other countries accept the produce from? So we need to balance a couple of levers here, and we have to help our smallholder farmer in producing the right product at the right time. Because we have the cyclical nature. When they see the prices of tomatoes go up, everybody goes and starts growing tomato for the next season. So you have this, what we call as troughs and dips. And I really think, first and foremost, we got to make sure that we are providing them the right kind of inputs, the information to grow. And then, as you heard some of my speakers say, It's about grading. It's about sorting. It's about the ability to get. And yesterday, one of the speakers that I heard was talking about GI. If you look at it, we have basmati, we have Alfonso mangoes, but there are so many other things that if we do GI, it allows us to create that market. And I really think, and I appeal to the young people here is, you've heard that as an Indian farmer, they're very resilient. With all of the challenges, they're able to produce and they still continue to produce. I really think the ability to bring new thinking, the marketing, the downstream is really the lacuna from my perspective, Ravi.
Yeah, so lots of checks and balances and hand-holding is required for the stakeholder.
And that also is opportunities, right? So
yes,
somebody in this particular call, 719 people, figures out a way to reduce that post-harvest loss from 30% to 10%. There are many ways, but that's where we need the thinking to come in.
Yeah, and apart from that, there are other challenges which are, apart from pandemic, there are climate change, drought conditions, and many more things that adds to the. So a lot of things has to be looked into at the policy level and the strategy level. Okay, continuing with the Q&A session. Next question we have from Sana Sheikh. Sana Sheikh.
Hello, so am I audible?
Yeah, very much.
Okay, so my question is for Mr. Praveen Wagh. So, sir, thank you for letting us know what changes we can expect in the retail industry post-pandemic. So, sir, my question is, with recent close downs of neighboring stores and retail stores all across India due to pandemic hit, I want to know to what extent did the emergence of JioMart help Reliance Retail to cope up with this effect?
Sure. And I'm happy that you are asking this question because I want to touch upon this, not only for Reliance per se, but generally. JioMart has helped big time during this. JioMart was launched in the pandemic, of course, from convenience point of view. But to regain the volumes, to regain the top line, the JioMart has helped big time. No doubt in that. In fact, in such a short time, Reliance has started becoming a serious contender in the e-retailing space that exists in India as of now. The space itself is growing like crazy, and I think the benefit that Reliance and likes of Reliance vis-a-vis the others in the market is that we also have a physical presence in the market apart from going to e-retailing. So both presences together, it has helped regain, as I said, regain what otherwise we would have lost, and also introducing more and more customers to modern retail. And modernizing the whole retail sector as in whole. So e-retailing has helped big time. I hope that's what you are wanting.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, e-retailing. What I visualize, it's a future of retail sector. Especially post-pandemic. During the pandemic, we realized this, that how much important this e-retail sector is for us. Thank you, Mr. Praveen. We move to next question. Senorita Yvonne. Senorita?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
So my question is for Mr. Abhijit, sir. Yes, my question is, what makes Global Gourmets different from other frozen industries which are operating on a similar product line?
What makes difference is basically the first one-line answer would be the diversity of the product profile. And to elaborate in more pattern was basically a certification. What we have with this kind of a facility is one of the biggest advantage in the system. production capability, and the new product development capability. Because we cater to one of the top private retailers like Tesco, Trader Joe's, Carrefour, Picard, Iceland, Asda, Walmart. So these are the private labels we do it. So without the new production capabilities or the kind of innovation we get into, we have a task to present 75 new products every year. So that kind of a new product development capabilities we have. And that makes the competitive edge over the competitors in the same industry.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Durakkar. Now we will take few questions from our participants. May I request Mr. Dattatreya Koile? Mr. Dattatreya?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please switch on your video mic and please ask your question and to whom the question is addressed.
Sir, I would like to ask, thank you, sir. I would like to ask question to Dilip, sir, Dilip Rajan, sir.
Okay.
Sir, now whole universe facing COVID-19 outbreak, and in India there are new 3 farmer reforms, especially Essential Commodity Act. Generally in India, tomato, onion and potato crop in which price fluctuation is high. What will be the impact of that? Essential Commodity Act, what will the impact of that in global food chain after pandemic? This
Mr. Rajan, I think
I kind of am difficult to. I heard about essential commodities and he's talking about potato, tomato, and onion. Can you repeat that question for me, please? No, can you, Ravi? Did you hear the question?
I also get the question in bits and pieces. So I guess what I can collect is the question that he says that the 3 reform bills in agriculture that recently introduced. So how it is going to affect the global food chain? This is what I can collect in bits and pieces.
Okay, so yeah. I think this is probably the tough question, Mr. Dattatreya, and I'll tell you why it's tough. Number one, the intent of the act, all 3, was to liberalize the agriculture economy. Now, as we speak, you can see whether it's in Punjab, whether it is in other parts of the state, there is reaction to the new law. Obviously, the concerns, some of them are valid, which is MSP, will we have support price. But to talk about the Essential Commodities Act, I think the notion of removing POT, potato, onion, and tomato, in the long term is actually very, very good. And why do I say that? I really think this became a product that, yes, in the era where we did not have surplus, where we were talking about, subsistence farming, there were certain things, that were needed to come under the ambit of the essential commodities. So to your question, I really think if we can get a steady stream, case in point, onions or tomatoes, if we are able to continue to produce surplus that is complemented with a very good export policy and the required infrastructure, I really think that India, and I give this quote for you, if a small country like Thailand can be a net exporter of vegetables, a country such as ours, which has the perfect, I wouldn't say perfect, the broadest sense of agroclimatic zones, the ability to produce throughout the year, I really think this removing it from essential commodities allows us to actually be able to play on the global thing. So right now, that's what I think. But there are certain things that has to come in, because you saw we pulled onion out and then suddenly we had to cap the exports because the local consumers were worried. Elections are coming up, so we had to maintain. I really think when it comes to a steady state, I'm a believer that open markets are actually better than the otherwise.
Excellent. I think, Mr. Dattatreya, you got your answer. Even a few of the insights are very new to me also. Okay. Because of time constraint, we will take last 2 questions. May I request Mr. Varun Miglani? Mr. Varun?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. My question is to Praveen sir.
Okay.
Yeah, Praveen sir, my question is with respect to the new Market Act, are we looking at increasing procurement directly from the farmers by the organized retailers? Could you like to give your perspective on it? Like, because even organized retailers face challenges in procurement because of farmers' behavior. So if you could throw some light on it. Thank you.
As the earlier panelist said, the effects of the acts are yet to be seen. While the intent was very clear, the intent was to increase the participation of private players in the overall sector. Will the buying change from organized retail? I don't think so, because the always the endeavor of organized retailers is always to go to the farmer and buy, because of the price benefits that we get, which is obvious, where we cut down the middle costs that come in. So the endeavor will always continue. Will the farmer's behavior change? Very difficult to answer at this point. Let's hope that it does. Because there are many other factors apart from the bill, right? There are many socio-economic factors which come into play, which help farmers decide where to sell and where not to sell. Will that change for better? Yet to be seen. We'll have to be a bit patient and hold on and let us not forget that we are a country of 130 crore people, 1.3 billion people. The effects will take time, to come to be seen. So let's be patient for a couple of years. I think we will start at least getting to know which direction we are going.
So just a follow up, the transaction costs are lower when you purchase directly from the market, because you don't have to invest in the supply chain of going to the farmer.
The transaction costs not necessarily are low, number one, and number two, the control on quality is very limited when you go to the market and buy. So organized retailers normally would have a balance of both. Because the moment a customer walks in an organized retail, suddenly the expectations of qualities change. Even you and me, when we go to buy vegetables in mandis, our expectations are different, and when we go to organized retails, the expectations are different. Really, the cost of transaction is not as important here, in my opinion. Is the whole sourcing piece that will have to be seen in toto. And that will depend, as I said, mostly on the behavior of the farmers rather than the intent of the buyers. That the intent is not going to change. That is going to remain same.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now we will take the last question, and I request Shubham Mishra. Shubham Mishra. Shubham Mishra.
Ravi, I think if the panelists agree, we have still 10 minutes, so you can pick up 2-3 questions more, because there are quite a few.
This is the last question that we have.
Okay, in the chat box there are questions.
Okay. I'm not able to see that. I have to see that. Shubham Mishra, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Please ask your question.
So my question to any of the panelists. So how can we reduce the toxicity of the foods so that we can export in other countries, or we can become healthier?
Repeat again. Say again.
So how can we reduce the toxicity of our food?
Toxicity of our food. To whom your question is addressed? I think Mr. Durakkar.
I'll take this question.
Yeah.
I'll take this question. So let us define what is exactly the toxicity of the food we are talking about. So we have different toxicity levels.
Pesticide and herbicide.
The toxicity coming from the refined vegetable oil, which we call as FFAs, which normally keeps changing when the usage of oil goes high. Then we have the BPA, which comes from the packaging side, which gets contaminated to the food, which is normally from the plastic bags or the containers. Then we have another toxicity coming as a trans fat. Then we have some of the heavy metals, which is normally containing in the fish and the sugar. So when we say toxicity has to be reduced, basically this is at the production level. There are certain alertness which happens, like at our factory when we see the FFA, the oil what we use, we have to check very periodically on the oil fat content or the free fatty acids, so that it should not exceed the permissible limit signed in the contract with our end user. And that reduces the toxicity of the food. That's where we are standing very strong in supplying to brands like Tesco, Trader Joe's, and Flipkart. Then in non-vegetarian, basically the fish which contains heavy metals, especially when we talk about toxicity, is something which is mercury. So these fish, when they come to the shore, they eat a lot of especially this happened in the south of Gujarat, near Alang in India. I would be very specific on that part, where the shipbreaking was happening and the water was very polluted. So we had a very difficult thing that all the fish which was caught in that particular zone was contaminated with heavy metal, that is toxic material. But otherwise, in the meat part, it doesn't affect because toxicity remains in the guts of the fish. And when it comes to plastic, we normally take a declaration from our packaging material that they are BPA free. You must have also seen in a lot of plastics like Milton or any branded plastic Tupperware and all, when they sell, they write very highlightingly, this is a BPA free, that means a food grade plastic. So we are already taking that kind of a precautions where toxicity is not passed to the end user. And I hope this must have answered your question.
Yeah.
Ravi, there is one question from, I think, Rahul.
So I will take a question, although we have said, but because we are getting a good response from participants, so I have to take a few more questions. So I request Vishal Bharti. Vishal Bharti.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, please.
Actually, I'm not related to agri-business. Actually, I'm working in a Panasonic firm. Actually, it is a basically we are dealing with the MCB switches.
Please be curious. We'll ask your question.
So my right now, situation is that like not food vendors like Rediwala or all these due to pandemic situation.
Ravi, he has mentioned his question. It is for Mr. Atul.
Ma'am,
Mehra.
I'm not able to hear. I think there is some issue with the connectivity.
Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Okay, I will read the question. How we make the question is to Mr. Atul Mehra. Yeah, how we make small food vendors cope with this pandemic situation. Right now, they have spent all their savings and they forcefully working in factories to feed their families. So social disruption part is going on to Mr. Atul Mehra. Hello.
He's on mute.
Mr.
He is on mute.
Hello.
Yeah.
We talked about the vendors. We have a government scheme in which the government has asked the banks to give loans to all these vendors of about 10,000 rupees. And I see a big change that has come up in terms of these vendors coming out in the market. Initially, because of the lockdown, they faced the challenges. But now what we see is that the food ultimately has to be sold through them. And slowly this is picking up. I think the challenge that was initially there has gone. Having said this, the FSSAI is also we want to have standard vending machines, tailors, and the way they can do it, like supplying food through their carting machines and vending machines, this issue should go away. If I could answer the question, because it's quite a complex question. He's saying that the vendors are now working in the factories. I don't think that's so very true. It's a general statement. Having said this, the vendors, they are again back on the streets. I can see them there, and things should change for them.
Yes, slowly they are coming back. But I have seen in the Haridwar, na, I have just a general statement from my side. Actually.
Yeah, I hope you, Mr. Mehra, has answered in the best way. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
So moving to
now maybe one question.
Last question we will be taking, and the question is from Akash Rai. Mr. Akash Rai, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Please.
Sir, due to the pandemic, retail's company has gone so down. So how to grow up in future?
To whom your question is addressed?
Sir, it's to you.
Okay.
Mr. Praveen Wag, maybe. Praveen can answer.
Yeah, I think export should talk. It will be
okay, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll take that. So from retail, as I told you, I don't think that the retail companies, as far as the food retailing is concerned, are that hit. Overall, retail, modern retail as a sector definitely has got hit. Within that, the food, as many of us talked, is not as badly hit. How can they cope up? We have seen that the only way to coping up is reaching to customers' houses if customer is not able to go out. I'm essentially talking about the e-retail. One other thing that at least we have seen is that e-retailing does not necessarily mean cutting down the small moms and pop shops within India, small kirana shops in India. I'm sure most of you guys are aware that JioMart as a platform also offers the products to local kirana shops. So it's not only cutting down the middlemen, it is also in economy and social fabric like India, it is also working with them to reach to the final customer is what is going to matter. So in my opinion, summarizing, going in e-retailing, and B, working in tandem with the local retailers is going to give the modern retailers an edge. I hope that's what you want to know. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Praveen Wag. We have got good response from participants. I thank you all participants for your really making this Q&A session very interactive. This was a wonderful session and a lot of insights from the experts from the industry. I personally enjoyed the session a lot. With this, we came to end of this Q&A session. Stay tuned with us. We have few important announcements for our participants regarding the pre-event conducted as part of our eConclave 2020. I request our esteemed panelists to please stay tuned with us for a few more minutes. With this, I hand over the session to Nivedya and Irashi for the announcements of pre-event results. Nivedya?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for such an effective question-answer session. Now, we would like to announce the winners of Kritya and Samadhan, which are the two main events of Future of Work Post-Pandemic Global Food Chain. Kritya, sponsored by Alap Milap, is a B-plan competition organized to check the scientific knowledge and critical thinking ability of the student. Samadhan, sponsored by Zydex, the Best Consultant event, is a report writing competition organized to evaluate the knowledge of students in the field of global food supply chain. In these events, more than 600 students participated, and 4 students, that's 2 winners and 2 runner-up, made to the finals. Total cash prize worth rupees 30,000. We are really thankful to the sponsors, Alap Milap and Zydex Industries, for motivating these students for participation. Moving to the results, for Kritya, the winner team is Ignifying Minds NARM with team member Vasant Kumar KM, Bharat Kumar Reddy. Runner-up, Estic Irma and team member Ishan Shakya, Ayush and Surbhi Singh. Now Samadhan, winner is Priyam Prateek, SIMS, and runner-up is Akshay Pai, SCMHRD. Congratulations to all the winners and runner-ups, and thank you everyone for participating. As we come to the end of this memorable event, we would like to request Dr. Ravi Sharma to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Nivedya. Today was, as Nivedya said, it is really a memorable and a wonderful day as we got an opportunity to listen industry stalwarts directly. It was wonderful interacting with you all. It is my privilege now to propose a vote of thanks. I would like to thank all the panelists here. Sorry. So I would like to thank all the panelists here. Mr. Abhijit,
somebody's mic is on.
Yeah, please turn off your mic. Yeah, I would like to thank all the panelists here. Mr. Abhijit Durgkar, Vice President, Sales and Marketing, Global Government Private Limited. Mr. Atul Mehra, Chairman, Tasty Dairy. Mr. Dilip Rajan, Managing Director, East West Seeds. And Mr. Praveen Wagh, General Manager, Reliance Retail. Thank you for your insights. Very, very well presented. A lot of valuable knowledge for thought and a lot of things that I wouldn't have gotten. A lot of terrific takeaways from this panel and for our participants. I thank you everyone for their participation and shown your interest to meet our expert panelists. I must thank our sponsors for pre-event Milap and Alap and Zydex Industries for their support. My heartfelt gratitude to our director, deputy director, admin team, IT team and PR team, whose support has resulted this session seamlessly. It's been a great presentation and best of luck to everybody going forward. Stay blessed. Thank you. Stay safe.
Before we come to an end, we would like to make an announcement. We request all the participants to fill the feedback form mailed to you. Also, the e-certificates would be provided. Do get in touch with us in case of any queries and also contact the POC of the event to collect your prize money. Our next session, which is on Future of Work Post-Pandemic Sustainability Next, is at 1:45 p.m. So see you all there. Thank you.
So thank you, Nivedya, Ravi, all the panelists, Mr. Rajan, Mr. Mehra, Abhijit, Praveen, it was wonderful listening to you. Lots of new things we got through this session. And you know, today we got the maximum response. In fact, we touched 750. So I hope everyone who participated, they thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for being there and look forward to having you in person back to the campus. Thank you. Stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.